Hello everyone, welcome to Practical C++, the beginner course. I'm Zach, and in this tutorial we will be discussing data types and variables. Before we get into the code blocks editor, I kind of want to do this on a notepad sheet real quick so that we can show you. I want to kind of discuss with you how these data types are declared and what they mean. So a data type, what is a data type? What is a data type? A data type is basically a description of what we are using. So for instance, in the real world, if we were going to use the letter B, for instance, well, this is, to us, is known as a letter. This would be the data type in programming. Okay? Or what if we were talking about the number 7? Well, in our world, this is just called a number. This, again, is a data type. And, if we were talking about programming. Except in programming and in C++, we don't call them letters and numbers. So, what do we call them? Well, let's start with just a single letter. Let's just start with the character B. Okay, again, this is just a letter, but in programming, this is called a character data type. And the character data type, sorry about that, the character data type is denoted or kind of encapsulated with single quotation marks, as so. So that's how, so in C++, this letter B is called character data, and you have to declare it with single quotation marks. And when we get into example code, you'll understand what I mean by declare with single quotation marks. But let's move on to a number. So let's say 7. In C++, this is called an integer. And an integer is denoted just as it's seen. No quotation marks, nothing special. What about multiple letters, though? What about, the name Bill? That's 4 characters, but this thing is a whole. What is it? Is that a word? In our world, it's called a word, but what is it? What is it in C++? Well, in C++, it is known as a string, which is alphanumeric data. Okay, but for now, just know it's called a string data, and you denote string data with double quotation marks, as so. Okay, and I kind of want to go over one last thing, and that's decimal numbers. So like 7.77. Is that an integer? Well, no, it's not, because it's not a whole number. So what is that called? Well, in this, it can be one of two things. Actually, it can be multiple things, but for this course, we're going to keep it simple. Know that it's either a float or a double. Okay? And it's denoted just as 7.77. For this class, we're going to use the word double, and the reason why is because if you use the word float, when you declare it as this 7.77, behind the scenes in code blocks automatically converts it to a double anyways. So for now, we're just going to call it a double data type. Okay? So let's move on to some actual code. Okay? And we're going to practice declaring these 4 major data types that I've shown you here. So let's open up our code. And by the way, in the last tutorial, the code was, I zoomed in if you couldn't tell, if it was hard for you to read in the last tutorial. Hopefully this will make it easier for you to read. So right now let's go ahead and practice what we learned in the last tutorial in this project. I want to practice writing our skeleton, so to speak, everything we need for our code to run. So we need to do basic input and output library. We need to include it. So let's include IO stream. Okay. We want to use the standard namespace. Okay. And then we need to declare our main function. And we need a return value for this main function, which, as we said, we're going to use 0. And this is our skeleton. This is everything we learned in the last tutorial. Again, if you still haven't got this down yet, you know, I suggest just practicing it over and over until you get it down to where you can basically write this code in your sleep to get your program to compile and run as so with process return 0. But let's get into our data types and variables. Okay, so we discussed what the data types were. You know, it's kind of a description of what you're dealing with, but what's a variable? Well, a variable is kind of like a box, and your data type is a label on that box. That's how I want you to picture this. So you have a box, and then you have a label on this box. Okay, so let's say we put the letter B inside a box. Okay, so the letter B is character data, right? We discussed this earlier. So to declare the character data, we write CHAR, which stands for character. Okay, so that's our label, character, CHAR, that we're putting on our box. Now our box is user defined, meaning we can name it whatever we want. So I'm going to name it letter, because that's what's in this box, is letter. It's a letter, okay? And then we need to declare what the letter is, so we put a equal sign. I'm sorry about that, guys. I don't know what that is popping up. So you put an equal sign, okay? And then, again, character data is denoted with single quotation marks. And then inside the single quotation marks, we put our letter B. And then end the statement with a semicolon. And this right here is declaring a variable with the data type of character. And that variable, that character variable, is the letter B. Okay? So let's move on. Let's move on to the other. Now, if you don't know what this is used for yet, that's fine. In the next tutorial, we're going to discuss how we use these variables and what exactly they're used for. But for now, we're just declaring them, and I'm kind of giving you a visualization of what they are. Okay, so just for now, think of them as a box with a label and then something inside the box. In this case, it's a box that holds characters, and in the box is the character B. Okay? So let's move on to a number, a box that holds numbers. So again, a number is going to be an integer if it's a whole number. So to declare a whole number integer value, we write the word int, which you've probably remember from here, int main, which we'll get into why you need that again in future tutorials. But for now, let's focus on this. And we're going to put a number in here, so let's call this variable number. Again, it's user defined. If I wanted to call it Jimmy, I could call it Jimmy. But you kind of want it, you know, it's convention to call it something that it represents. So we're going to call it a number. And that's going to equal the number 7. And you end that with a semicolon. Remember, no quotation marks right here. Just the number. Okay, so that's another variable. Let's do the other two variables we did. Let's do let's make a variable that holds the name Bill inside. So to do that, we write string because that's the data type. Remember, multiple letters is alphanumeric data is called string data. Okay? Which, you know, I'll actually get into it later. String is technically a class, and I know you don't know what class is, so for now just know it is a data type for now, okay? String data, and we're going to call it name equals double quotation marks Bill semicolon. Okay, so there's your variable for a name or multi-character data. Okay, now in string, don't get it confused with only being characters. If I wanted to do Bill 99 hyphen semicolon semicolon inside these quotation marks, that's fine. Alphanumeric data will hold all these characters, and this will not cause an error. This is everything you can keep in this variable. That is fine. So just know that. But for now, actually, let's call it Bill 99. Okay, so that you don't forget that you can actually put numbers in string. If you wanted to do just 99, you could, as long as you have the double quotation marks. It's still string data. Okay, but for now it's Bill 99. And then for the last data type, let's do a decimal number. Rick, remember I said it could be float or double, but for this class we're going to use double. So it's a double. Let's call it decimal equals 7.77 semicolon. And all this is fine. If we run this program, it will not cause any errors. Everything runs, process returns 0, same outcome. All this stuff is happening behind the scenes, so of course you won't see anything in the console window when we run it, anything different. You know, you'll still get the same result, process returns 0, everything's fine. But the point is to just show you how to declare these variables and data types, kind of discuss what they are, and show that, you know, if you declare them right, you won't get an error. Let me show you what will happen if you call this character, or let's say we call it string, okay, without the double quotation marks. If you declare it wrong, which this is declared wrong because you're calling it a string and you don't have your double quotation marks. If you want it to be right, you'd have to put in double quotation marks. But if you take those out, then this is declared wrong, and when you try to build and run, you'll get an error. See this red box? And then if you look down here in the log, you can scroll down and it says error, conversion from double to non-scalar type standard : string requested. And that build failed, 1 error. So that right there will cause the program to crash. So we need to change that back to double. And if we run it again, build and run, everything will go fine. So that's it for this tutorial. Let's move on to the next tutorial, and we will learn about input and output, and continue on after that to some basic arithmetic and some more fun stuff. So thank you for watching.